So we covered the story the other day, y'all. Jon Stewart went after the Trump fraud defenders, people like Kevin O'Leary, who was out there saying, oh, this is a victimless crime. Trump didn't do anything wrong. Every billionaire, every multimillionaire does the stuff that Trump does, bro. How could you go after Trump for it, bro? We're all fucking criminals, bro. So don't punish us for our crimes. Because if we all commit crimes, then none of us actually commit crimes. Like, it's just embarrassing, terrible, disgusting. So you had Jon Stewart took aim at them over that, really took them down. It was a blazing segment. I enjoyed every second of it. Well, now in response to that, you have some people on the right trying to play gotcha with Jon Stewart, where they're like, aha! What if I told you you did the exact same thing Trump did? Okay, let's see. Present the evidence. Let's evaluate if Jon Stewart did the same sort of financial crimes that Trump did. The insurance fraud, the tax fraud, the business fraud, the 17 different fucking kinds of fraud. We already know from his history, Trump University was an outright fraud. He had to pay out millions of dollars as a direct result of that. Let's see if Jon Stewart has the same checkered past, or if this is just a fucking desperate attempt to fire back and try to play gotcha and hypocrisy burn on something. So this is my boy David Dole at the Rational National. He breaks this all down. Let's enjoy.
It was all part of a very sophisticated real estate practice known as lying.
Oh boy. On Monday, Jon Stewart did a fantastic segment taking down Trump on his fraud charge, and the reaction from the right was so ridiculous that Jon Stewart actually came out to react to it afterwards. And I'm going to get to one of the dumbest pieces of writing, to quote someone I'm going to quote in a bit here, one of the dumbest pieces of writing I've ever read. So first, to properly understand where this all began, I'm not going to show you the full segment, of course, it's like 12 minutes long, but I'm going to show you a portion of this segment that gives you an idea of what Jon Stewart was arguing in the piece.
What did Trump actually do to earn this penalty? Well, it turns out that for a decade, whenever Trump wanted to get a loan or make a deal, he would illegally inflate the value of his real estate. For instance, suggesting that his 11,000 square foot penthouse was a 30,000 square foot penthouse, I guess somehow including the sky in the calculation. We all do it. I mean, in my license, I'm not listed as 5'7", you know. I'm listed as 30,000 square feet. Thank you. And the Attorney General of New York knew that Trump's property values were inflated because when it came time to pay taxes, Trump undervalued the very same properties. It was all part of a very sophisticated real estate practice known as lying.
So that gives you a good idea of what was being argued in that piece. Donald Trump, this is already well known, I've discussed this on this very channel, Donald Trump artificially inflated his own assets, including almost tripling the real estate of his place that didn't exist. He didn't have a 30,000 square foot penthouse.
And by the way, just to be clear here, nobody who has defended Trump, literally none of them, it's been very clear to me because I covered this in detail from the very beginning, from the frickin' press conference that Letitia James gave when she walked through the indictment and all the evidence and stuff. Literally none of them who are defending Trump have read the case. None of them. None of them have read the indictment. None of them. And so it's impossible for me to take people seriously when they didn't even engage with the basic source material on this. And you'll notice they don't actually try to really defend Trump on any of the specifics. It's all deflection and obfuscation, or in this case, it's gotcha, hypocrisy, something, right? So anyway, David will keep breaking it down.
And then devalued it when it came to paying taxes. This is where we get to the reaction from the right. Now, again, this isn't just randos online. These are massive leaders in the conservative movement and a massive newspaper attempting to make an argument that doesn't make any damn sense. Of course, because they're clowns. Tim Pool here with his argument. Did Jon Stewart commit fraud when he sold his penthouse for $17.5 million? New York listed its market value at $1.8 million, an estimate or assessed value at around $800,000. Assessed value is when it comes to property taxes. Who did he defraud? I am shocked. Jon Stewart did not invent square footage. The assessed value is out of his hands. I'm going to get to a little deeper on that specifically, but this has nothing to do with what Donald Trump did, where he lied about how much square footage his properties had.
And also got a loan based on false pretenses. That's the fraud. Overvaluing when it's convenient for you, undervaluing to pay less taxes, getting a loan based on false numbers, lying about the square footage. The idea that he's comparing these things. Oh, that's so fucking embarrassing. Oh my God, that's so fucking embarrassing. Okay, wait for it. Dole's going to break it down even more. Apparently, there's a law in New York which sort of, you'll see, it like caps the amount that you pay for your property taxes. You'll see. Watch, he'll break it down.
So this led to a New York Post article. Jon Stewart found to have overvalued his New York City home by 829% after slamming Trump's civil case as not victimless. So before I even get to the piece, I just got to quote Jordan Weisman here because I laughed reading this tweet. This is an article about how Stewart sold his apartment for more than its estimated market value. It is truly, I can say without hesitation, one of the dumbest pieces of published writing I have ever encountered. So here's the piece. I got a few choice highlights here. This is the very first paragraph. Right, comedian Jon Stewart ranted this week that Donald Trump's civil real estate case overvaluing his properties was not victimless. Yet when it came to his own home, Stewart benefited from, I highlighted similar here, similar inflation. Similar doing a lot of heavy lifting here because Jon Stewart did not make up square footage. This is so... Look, I know the bar is low for a place like New York Post, but man, this can't even meet their bar. This is so... absolutely insane to attempt to argue. I don't know how this made it to publish. Like, how? Aren't there some standards? And actually, this article was updated apparently later after it was posted. I'm going to guess what they put in because Jon Stewart reacted to it. I'll get to his reaction. But they even go on to undercut the whole piece, this whole argument in their own piece. But they go on to write here, to further his point, Stewart argued that money isn't infinite. A loan that goes to the liar doesn't go to someone else who's giving a more honest evaluation. So the system becomes incentivized for corruption. Stewart also contended that failing to declare a higher market value on a property while paying taxes based on a lower assessed value constitutes fraudulent behavior. Donald Trump made up square footage. What do you not understand about the obvious differences here? This has nothing to do with assessed value compared to the square footage that was invented by Donald Trump. So this is I have to imagine, it's possible this was in the original piece. I don't know, but the piece was updated after Stewart reacted to it. They included his tweet in here, but they go on to write themselves. The difference between Stewart and Trump's cases is that a judge ruled, it's on the paperwork. A judge ruled that Trump sometimes exaggerated to lenders about how big his properties were, including the square footage of his Trump Tower apartment. That's a massive difference between the two that is tucked in near the end of this article. It's just... like, how can anybody possibly trust anything they read from these clowns? So Jon Stewart goes on to react, saying, "Oh my God, I've been caught doing something not remotely similar to Trump. I guess all I need to do now is start a fraud college, steal classified documents, bankrupt casinos, pay hush money, grab you-know-what, discriminate in housing, cheat at golf, and foment insurrection, and you'll revere me." Absolutely fantastic reply to this insanity. And to properly end on here, circling back to Tim Pool, Ben Dreyfuss has this thread on this. Tim Pool apparently doesn't understand how property taxes work. So Tim Pool reacted to Jon Stewart's tweet that I just showed you, saying, you sold a property in New York valued at $1.8 million to someone for $17.5 million, and they lost $4 million because of it, and you paid taxes on a valuation of $748K. When it came time to pay taxes, he undervalued his property. So Ben Dreyfuss goes on to discuss or explain the idea that people who sell their house for a price above the assessed value should call the government and be like, "Hey, apparently it was worth more than you thought, so could you please recalculate for back years and send me a new bill," is hilarious. People are like, "But it sold for so much more than it was assessed." Take that complaint up with the assessor. There are, in fact, totally non-corrupt reasons why assessments sometimes do fall way behind actual true market value. But regardless, it has nothing to do with Stewart. So, and he goes on to get even into deeper details about New York City specifically, showing that assessed value for condo buildings with 4 to 10 units cannot go up by more than 8% each year or more than 30% over a 5-year period unless you did renovations. Therefore, it may take several years for assessed value to adjust to a large increase in market value. This explains why assessed value goes up even when market value goes down. Assessed value for condo buildings with 11 or more units have to be phased in 20% each over a 5-year period, so it may take several years for the assessed value to adjust to large increases or decreases in market value. And he goes deeper on this, and essentially, should a wealthy individual like Jon Stewart have to have paid more taxes? Yeah, yes, he should have. But that's not his fault. That's the way the system works in New York City. That's the way the system is. So there's no fraud being committed here because at no point is Jon Stewart lying about the property. He's not making up rooms that don't exist. He's not making up square footage for the property and then devaluing it when it comes to paying taxes. The property is what it is. It's assessed at what it's assessed at. The market value is what it is. This is standard.
Oh, it's such an embarrassing attack on Jon Stewart. Oh my God. It is the saddest attempt at like a hypocrisy burn gotcha I've ever seen. This is not even close to similar.
Trump lied about square footage. How do you not understand the differences? And of course they understand the differences. The people, Tim Pool has to. Tim Pool's a propagandist. I'm sure he understands the difference. He has to understand the difference. But
I don't know if he does. I don't know if he does.
The fact that this made it to the New York Post, like, who wrote this? Mary Kay Jacob.
By the way, I've seen a number of articles now responding to the New York Post thing, and basically, like, Mediaite had a piece that's just like, oh my God, this is the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. Mediaite was like, New York Post pushes wildly false claim about Jon Stewart.
Absolute clown. The fact that this made it to the New York Post, and again, low bar, New York Post. Still, it's a newspaper. It's a large media institution. It
is crazy that this made it there. It is crazy. Like, does nobody there have brain cells?
So, I don't know. It's just so beyond the pale.
So, by the way, I'm going to take it a step further. Every time we talk about this, I try to make sure to lay out for you what Trump actually did. Okay? Now, again, the claim against Jon Stewart is you were able to sell your place for higher than market value, which, by the way, happens all the time. People have a bidding war, it goes up and up and up, and you could sell it for sometimes way above what the original listing price was. That's the claim against Jon Stewart. Oh my God, you sold your house for a lot, but you were paying taxes on a much lower number, which again is just the number that the government says this is what you pay taxes on. There's no fraud. There's no getting a loan based on false pretenses. There's no making up square footage. Not remotely similar. But what did Trump actually do? He undervalued his properties for taxes, overvalued it when trying to sell or promote or get loans from banks on more favorable terms. The key part there is get loans from banks on more favorable terms. He falsified business records. He issued false financial statements. He did insurance fraud. He did bank fraud. He had 200 or more false and misleading asset valuations. His Wall Street property, he listed it as worth over $500 million, worth $200 million. Trump's apartment, he said, was 30,000 square feet, as David points out a number of times. It was 11,000 square feet. He said it was worth $327 million. That's a price higher than any apartment has ever sold for in New York City history. He overstated it by $200 million. He did this to increase his net worth and get banks to offer him more favorable terms. When it comes to Mar-a-Lago, he gets revenue of $25 million. It's valued at max $75 million. Trump says it's worth $739 million. And by the way, there are other times he says it's worth over $1 billion. He got a loan of $170 million from Deutsche Bank and sold the post office, the old post office, for over $300 million. A profit of $100 million, but he got the loan based on false pretenses and fraud. So there's a laundry list of things here. If you did the things that he did on a much smaller scale, they would lock your ass up. There's no doubt about that. And this is not remotely similar to the Jon Stewart thing. It's such a sad reach and an attempt at a gotcha. And it's amazing to me that it got to the point where somebody said it, New York Post runs with it, but thankfully, to be fair, I saw a number of outlets sort of mocking the fact that this got through the New York Post and actually was out there. Yeah, it's embarrassing, man. This is really, really embarrassing. So, and by the way, again, final point, what you'll see here is they can't actually respond on the merits of what happened, on the merits of what is. They will not go into the specifics. They will not go into the details, not say, here's why this thing's actually okay, and da-da-da-da. They don't do that. They can't do that. So what do instead? You have people like Kevin O'Leary who basically come out and say, well, we all do it. All of us rich people are committing that sort of crimes and fraud, and we're all doing that. So you got to kind of let us get away with it. That's the Kevin O'Leary argument. And then from Tim Pool and others, it's the, aha! You actually did the exact same thing by being able to sell your house for more than what it was originally listed for. What? That's undeniably stupid. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.